let's go ahead to the next part here about Twitter and, well, I guess formerly known as Twitter. Elon Musk, overnight, has decided to change the name of the company to X. Let's go ahead and put this up there on the screen, debuting a brand new logo, which you will now find in the top left of your Twitter. Also, Crystal, I guess we're gonna have to start remaking these graphics because it currently says Twitter up there at the top. Or maybe we'll just stick to it because I don't think this one is going to catch on.
Let's see how long it lasts.
So the official rebrand, for those who are watching, you can see right there in front of you, you got the Twitter logo there on the right for the old one from the early 2000s. And we've got X there on the left. So for the uninitiated, for those who don't know, let's put Elon's announcement up there on the screen. Here's what he said about X. X.com now points to Twitter.com. The interim X logo goes live today. So this actually doesn't come out of nowhere. There's some interesting history behind X.com. X.com was actually the second company that Elon ever was the head of, and it eventually became known as PayPal because it was in the same building as the PayPal office with Peter Thiel. There's like a legendary like X.com and PayPal organization that happened because they got to know each other. They were both working on online payments. X was always the vision of Elon at that time in the 1990s, going into the dot-com bubble. The idea was that you should be able not only to seamlessly financially transact on the internet, but you should have almost like a one-stop shop for everything in terms of how you conduct your day-to-day life. It's actually interesting to consider this, but he was far ahead of his time because X.com, as it was envisioned in the 90s, is a lot like WeChat in China is today. And WeChat is effectively like an ecosystem where you have your payments, it has your social media, it has almost your entire digital online persona. Now, there's a reason that China has it structured that way, and it's because it's like, well, we could turn it on and we could turn it off at any point. So I'm not saying it isn't scary, but of course it's very convenient to the consumer, and he kind of dreamed it up at that time. It didn't end up working out for a variety of reasons, a lot of it having to do with bank regulations and also just the way our internet evolved versus theirs. I'm giving a very charitable read of this, just so everybody knows. I'm talking about the original vision. As to how it will be executed, well, Twitter, or X's CEO, let's put this up there on the screen, put out a statement hours after Elon announced this, saying, quote, X is the future of unlimited interactivity centered in audio, video, messaging, payments, and banking, creating a global marketplace for ideas, goods, services, and opportunities powered by AI. X will connect us all in ways they were just beginning to imagine. For years, fans and critics have pushed Twitter to dream bigger, to innovate faster, and to fulfill our greatest potential. X will do that and more. We have started to see X take shape over the last 8 months. Over our rapid feature launches, I'm sure you can call it that, there is absolutely no limit for transformation. X will be the platform that can deliver everything. Elon and I are looking forward to working with our teams and every single one of our partners to bring X to the world. So what do you think, Crystal? What do you think about the future of the X.com?
Raise your hand out there if you are ready to trust your banking to Elon Musk. Given what we've seen on the platform, the more regular crashes and bugs and glitches, the fact that they couldn't handle just like an audio-only launch for Ron DeSantis, and you're putting out these like grand ideas about replacing half of the global financial system. Okay, color me skeptical on that one. The funny thing is that, I was reading through the list of like the features and the changes and whatever, and most of them are pretty small ball. They're little like tweaks around the edges of like this or that functionality. And then it's like, well, I'm gonna change like this a little bit. We're gonna not call them followers anymore. We're gonna, implement this like creator payment system, which, that could be quite significant. And then it's like, and we're gonna take over half of the global financial system. It's like, okay, sure you are. In terms of the branding itself, I mean, listen, maybe I'm just being a stick in the mud because I get attached to something. I'm used to the Twitter bird. It's an iconic brand. It's very recognizable. This is super generic, weird. I just don't really understand the point of it. I think you gave up what was an iconic branding and imagery and all of that on sort of a scattershot basis and slapped this thing on it, and I don't think it looks particularly good in my opinion.
So what I would say is the problem I find is that this almost seems a bit desperate. So did anyone see the term AI in there? I'm like, oh, interesting. So there's a joke right now, like in the venture capital world, like all somebody has to do is just put AI at the beginning of their startup, and the valuation goes up by like $100 million. So I am like, okay, well, hold on a second. My issue with, trying to think so grand in this way is, dude, you got to focus on core competencies first. Like, are you profitable? Yes or no?
Right.
Are you on a road to profitability delivering a core service? Yes or no? Does the product work? I mean, the answer to that question is actually no, on the consistency basis. Is the product good even when it does work? Well, I can't be the only guy whose feed is flooded with terrible ads. I hate the For You page, love following. I don't know, we'll see. I mean, in terms of whether I am, in the minority here or not. The other question, whenever it comes to this is, are we actually going, like, ditching this iconic brand in favor of what? Like, can we realistically have a path towards that product? At the same time, look, this is Elon's modus operandi. He talked a massive game on Tesla for years. Everybody bet against him and said, you're going to lose, you're going to fail, you're going to all this. Production is never going to happen. He always ended up pulling it out. But part of the reason why I do think this is fundamentally different is Elon was solving a series of engineering problems at the end of the day. Engineering, financial, and economies at scale in the Tesla system. This is about social media, which is about what consumers like, their user patterns. It's not the same like, when somebody goes to you and says, there's no way we can produce 1,000 cars, well, or 100,000 cars. The engineering problem set that you have to solve there has to deal with, let's get some more material. Let's all work much harder. Well, what's a creative way to get there? And regulatory and all that. Social media is just totally different in terms of rolling stuff out. So, when we're talking here about banking, it's like, okay, did you even talk to any of the banks, before you launch this product? Are they going to enter with your system? What about Apple? The vast majority of Twitter users are on an iPhone or on Android. Are they going to take a cut of said product? Are they going to allow you through? The App Store has very onerous regulations whenever it comes to all this stuff. So that's more my thing. Is I'm like, yeah, did you really think about the vision and the core competency before you're doing it, or is this a ploy? Possible, I think, to actually raise money by putting AI in there and putting some sort of like moonshot thing on top of the company to try and keep a higher valuation and raise money at that.
Yeah, that's a smart point.
Right.
I mean, to me, in my opinion, what I'm most hoping for is that this is just like a flight of fancy with nothing real behind it and not any sort of play that is going to really work out. Because to me, and I thought this with, Facebook, now Meta, also another terrible rebranding, making some similar noises, is the idea of handing these oligarch tech billionaires even more control over our daily lives. Now we're going to marry, like, what we're allowed to say in the public square with also, like, what transactions we're allowed to engage in. That's terrifying. So I actively hope that this direction is, just a sort of a whim that's going to come to absolutely nothing, because the alternative that it actually somehow magically works out and Elon Musk takes over half of the global financial system is completely terrifying.
Right. Let's go ahead and put this up there also on the screen. Threads, which lived a very short life, appears to be plummeting after an explosive start. Quote, there's been a nearly 70% decline in the number of daily active users since the July 7 peak, spoiling their explosive launch just 2 weeks ago after signing up 100 million or so people.
Yeah.
This, is going to be a big question of, like, were they going to be able to keep engagement on the platform actually high? The answer appears to be no right now. I gotta say, I think Threads had some promise, but part of the problem is they did not have the ability to post from desktop. Many of the features that they were built into the core of the Twitter platform didn't exist there. So in terms of being able to switch over seamlessly, it didn't really exist. I knew some very prolific Twitter posters who were trying to do everything on Threads, and because they were limited to mobile, it just didn't work.
Yeah,
it also didn't have a good enough load time if you're actually trying to use it for news. And then, in terms of the algorithm, this was always a big question of friends and family. Are you people actually going to want to have their people who follow them on Instagram actually see what they want to post on Twitter or, on a Twitter alternative? I think that was also a big question. So I don't know. I think ultimately, the question, or really what we're learning from both of these things is, so these companies evolved to what they are for a reason. They have core competencies. Branching out of those core competencies can be done, but it's also extraordinarily difficult, like we were just talking about with X.com. And you made a great point, too, about centralization. The entire reason that the U.S. doesn't have a WeChat-like system is because we had an open, fair-ish and competitive system in the 1990s.
Yeah.
As in, everything evolved separately. So you didn't have the ability to combine. The reason China has a different system is they banned all of that in the 90s. And then they saw that with the development of the smartphone, that centralization is actually a good thing. And so they just combined everything into a single app. Whereas ours ported over from an original web system onto the phone, which is why you have a different ecosystem. And while that can be annoying, you know, not having everything seamlessly integrated, it also makes it so that there's no one centralized point of control and of power. So I actually hope, like you do, that it never exists here in the US, because it didn't, for the very reason that we originally had a very free and competitive ecosystem on the web that eventually ported over onto the smartphone.
Yeah, I think that those are all good points. I mean, on the threads, like, in part, they're a victim of their initial success and the blockbuster numbers that they did. So when you drop off 70%, it's still a lot of people who are using the platform. It's still 13 million daily active users. But, you know, I do sort of agree with you that it's not even that they did anything wrong. It's just hard to persuade people to move off the thing that they're comfy with and they've built a following and a network and whatever on. And so if there isn't an immediate payoff with that, or if there isn't sufficient immediate pain on the platform that they're on, it's just difficult. These things are sticky. You know, it's not the same as the era when you used to have MySpace and Facebook was able to come in and kill them. That was still very nascent. It was still early adopters who were on that platform. There's just more sort of like churn in that atmosphere. Now people are kind of locked into, if they're a Facebook person, they're on Facebook. If you're a Twitter person, you're there on Twitter. You've built up a whole thing there. And even, you know, for myself, like, I signed up for Threads, I took a look at it, and I lurked a little bit to see what the general vibe was. That's all I've done. Even though I sort of hate Twitter at this point, I really don't even post there anymore. But even for me, it's not like I'm super invested in making Threads work as some, you know, Twitter competitor alternative. And I have issues with the fact that there is no just straight timeline feed. It's all algorithmically generated. I have an issue with that. I mean, there's a whole censorship regime over there that I have a problem with too. So it wasn't even totally clear to me. And they made it clear also that they didn't even want politics on their platform. So I was like, all right, well, I guess I'm not really welcome here either. So I think it's going to be difficult to supplant Twitter as the, you know, microblogging platform, even though I suspect Threads will hang out there. They've, you know, got the corporate backing. They've got the Instagram tie-in. There may be some specific communities that develop over there that make sense with the connectivity between those two platforms. I could see it sort of working, but as an actual Twitter killer, I have grown increasingly skeptical.
Look, here's the other thing. You never know. I mean, Instagram Stories wasn't an overnight success versus Snapchat. It took years for them to battle it out. At the same time, you know, Facebook has a long history of also just nuking products overnight, like if they think that it's not going to work. So they have two options. They can nuke it. I don't think that they will, just from a pride perspective. And because, you know, maybe they see some user like actually using on the platform enough that it's nascent that they can build on.
Yeah.
They could add a lot more features and they could make it more useful. It's one of those where, don't forget, you know, with Twitter, I mean, sure, me and you, Crystal, how long did it take for you to really start engaging and tweeting? Like, I don't think it was instantaneous. You know, for me,
I was running for Congress, so I sort of had to. So I'm not a good example.
Right. I mean, for me, like, you know, I drift, and I was like, oh, you know, and this is when I had no job even in politics. I would send like one tweet a month. That was like normal. And then, you know, eventually you start getting into it. It was only until I became an actual employed journalist I started tweeting almost every single day. So that's one of those where, you know, now it does seem like I've been doing it forever, but at the time, whenever I signed up and I didn't work or it didn't have an actual job in politics, it was a little bit different. So when I think about like how a normal person might engage with the platform, you and I are like much more like super users or use it for professional purposes, which is not what the vast majority of people do on social media sites.
Yeah, that's true.
Never know.
Maybe we'll hold on some possibility for Threads there. Hey guys, if you like that video, go to breakingpoints.com, become a premium subscriber, and help us build the best independent media organization on the planet.
That's right. We're subscriber funded. We're building something new. We want to replace these failing mainstream media organizations.
So again, to subscribe, it's breakingpoints.com.